The law first mentioned teaches us to find a word or phrase or to show us how to follow that phrase or that word or that character throughout the Bible so that we can come up to some resolve. So the law first mentioned, we're going to do that tonight. Secondly, everybody say secondly. We're going to learn how to ask questions. So what questions do we ask? Shania, you should have a pen and a paper. Should be writing. Everybody should be writing. Always who, what, when, where, how, why, and for what. Always ask questions. So law first mentioned first. Secondly, asking questions. Thirdly, we will do an acrostic. Everybody say acrostic. Acrostic. Listen at you, buddy. Speak. An acrostic with the word wind. W-I-N-D. Wind. W-I-N-D. Then 4, we will have our take-home truths. And we should be done then. So, who wants to tell me the 4 activities we're going to do tonight? Quick review. First, the law first mentioned. What was after that?
Ask questions. Ask
questions, the Socratic seminar. You always want to have some questions and learn how to ask questions. What was the third one?
Acrostic.
Yeah, the acrostic with the word wind, W-I-N-D. All right. What is my wind? And then fourthly, what was the 4th thing we would do? Y'all remember the 4th thing?
Don't know.
All right. So, law first mentioned. All right. Before we get into law first mentioned, put everything in context. The context of John 14 is very simple. I love John 14 because it's easy. There are 3 things that happen in John 14. How many things, Seth, happen in John 14?
3.
How many? How many? Put your fingers up. You ain't got to chew. Just do that. 3. How many, Shania? All right. Brittany, how many things happen in John 14? 3. All right. Verses 1 through 12 is an event. Verses 1 through 12. In verses 1 through 12 of John 14, you have the death of a servant. So put that down. The death of a servant. Shania, you want to write? One of y'all want to write on the board? Make it easier. All right. Verses 1 through 12 is the death of a servant. You got that, Sanai? All right. Verses 13 through 21, you have dinner is served. So you have the death of a servant, verses 1 through what? 12. Verses 13 through 21, you have dinner is served, and the dinner is served in the desert. Is it the 5 or the? That is the 5, isn't it? Yeah. And in Mark, it's the 5 and the 4. And then in 22 through 33, you have, of course, Peter being delivered on the sea. So deliverance on the sea. And we want to focus in on the third illustration, which is the deliverance on the sea. So we got those 3 things? Everybody got those 3 things?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Peter, law first. What do y'all want to do next? Ask questions or do law first mention? Brittany said law first mention. Who said it? Law first mention? Brittany or Sanaa? Who said law first mention? I always know this. Peter. Where do we first find Peter in the Gospels? And you can use any gospel. Where do we first find Peter? So pull out your phones. You're going to have to use your phones. You're going to have to use technology. Where do we first find Peter in Matthew's gospel or the gospels, period? The first place we see Peter is where? First place, and then we will talk about our favorite place, and then Shania, we can talk about the final places. So first, favorite, and final. Write those down on your paper. The first place we see Peter, our favorite place we see Peter, and some of the, I guess, our final places we see Peter. Can anybody give me an instance where we know where Peter was seen first in the Gospels? Matthew 10, that's when he was called, right? Matthew 10, that's in Matthew's Gospel. Matthew 10, one of the first places. Y'all there, Matthew 10? And he called unto his 12 disciples and gave them power against unclean spirits. Give you time to get there. So first, one of the first places we actually see his name in Matthew is in the 10th chapter. Now, if you go through the other Gospels, you will see it. And it will be so much more interesting to see who Peter was and how Peter came to be, and I guess the climax. I don't know how do they teach language arts, Shania, now, Junior? Do y'all have like the resolution and the climax and I can't remember. Yeah, all of those things. The problem, the character flaw, all of those things. I can't remember off the top of my head. So Matthew 10, you see Peter in verse 2. Y'all see that? In Matthew 10 says, and when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of diseases. And now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter. So y'all see that? Look at the two words, Shania, in verse 10. Called and cast. Y'all see those words? Now, in chapter 10, he's called and he has the ability to cast. Go back to chapter 14 after you get through writing. Matthew 10, and then we're going back to Matthew 14. Uh-oh. In verse 29, there's a C word. So we know three things about Peter based upon mentioning. He was called, he was given the ability to cast, and in verse 29, Matthew 14, he was told to what? Come. Now, three things we know about Peter. He was called, he was given the ability to cast, and then thirdly, he was told to come, right? Now, if you go back to verse 27 and 26, you can add to the C. So now your ABC brainstorm is beginning to develop. Peter was called. Everybody say Peter was called.
Peter was called.
All right. Peter was given the ability to cast. Everybody say cast.
Cast.
All right. When you get to verse 29, Peter was told to what? Come. But in verse 26, what did Peter do? Verse 26. They what? Cried. So let's review the ABC brainstorm. It's real simple. This is what I love about instructions. If you was doing an ABC brainstorm, and Sade, of course, this is something that you could really implement going into Sunday school, Tanya as well, Brittany, Sanai, because it always helps you to talk and articulate. It's called vocal memory. Now we know at least 4 things about Peter. What 4 things do we know? He was called. He was able to cast. He was told to come. And he cried. All of them begin with the letter C. So watch this tonight. Keep looking at verse 27. Let's read verse 27. Come up with another C word for the ABC brainstorm, which was an activity that I did not have actually planned, but it's going to unfold as we continue to talk. In verse 27, it said, but straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good what? Courage or cheer, right? So Peter was called. Peter was given the ability to cast. Peter was told to come. Peter was told to be of good cheer or courage. And Peter cried. 5 C words about Peter, don't. And they don't have to be in that order. But when you think about the person of Peter, those are 5 different personalities now. Up in this one person. So now is he bipolar?
He's something. I wouldn't say bipolar though.
Why not?
Because
I just believe he showed different emotions.
Huh?
yeah,
I just believe he showed different emotions in different situations.
the same person would show these emotions. Not
Okay. Not one that's blessed mentally. So Sade, what did you say? You just think he showed different emotions?
Yeah, in different situations.
Okay, I like that. So we know it 5 things about Peter, but the first 2 comes in his calling, right? The last 3 that we have identified came in a storm. So now ask this question, Sanai. What emotions are you capable of showing when you're in the storm of life? Huh? Is this helping y'all? Remember, you've done an ABC brainstorm. You've taken C words and just run it all the way down. We know that Peter is a disciple. He's a believer. He's a follower of Jesus. And Sade said, he's not bipolar. But what he is a person that shows several emotions. So as a believer, Junior, as a follower of Jesus, there possibly might be a situation in my life where who you saw in chapter 10, I might be somebody else in chapter 14.
He like us.
They all like us. You can't make the people in the Bible any more different than you. Junior, you can put your hand up and go. You got to put your Baptist finger up.
I hear somebody trying to get in.
Did you?
Yeah.
They can call.
I heard the showing with his emotions.
All right. Showing emotions. Okay. So in the storm, okay, you done, everybody say law first mention. We're still walking through the law of mentioning, just learning how to study the Bible. Now we've taken a law first mention and done ABC brainstorm, teaching people how to teach. And y'all can do this with any age group that people who have words and you're teaching them to articulate. You've got 5 things you know about Peter. Sade comes back and says he's not touched. What he is a person that displays several emotions based upon where he is in life. Hey, Shana, don't let him put that pen in his mouth. Yeah, he don't need that. So let me ask the question again. Brittany, what emotions are you capable of displaying when you're in the storm of life? A lot, right? Peter was told, watch, in verse 27, first of all, they cried. You see that? Verse 26, you see that? They cried. That's an emotion. That's an outburst. Then Jesus said, okay, because y'all are so full of yourselves and you so caught up in what's external, I want you to be of good cheer or be of good courage. It is I, be not afraid. And then Peter was told to come. Peter has a gamut of emotions, even in the presence of Jesus. Please write that down. Not only does the storm produce a gamut of emotions, Brittany, an unclear vision from God possibly can produce a gamut of emotions. Does that make any sense? Junior, does that make any sense? You got to be taking notes, Junior. Think about it. You got to be writing 5 things you know about Peter. Even in the presence of God, guess what? He's still emotional, isn't he? Especially in the midst of a storm. So now we've done our ABC brainstorm. We've done our icebreaker. We've warmed up. Anybody have any questions before we go any further? What are you thinking? Tell me what your thoughts are. Everybody should have some thoughts. If that means all of us have to literally repeat what Sade said, let's just do that. And then the more we talk and the more we get open, possibly we can start thinking some other things. So Sade said this. Sade, would you repeat yourself? If you can remember.
I said that he's not bipolar. He just shows different emotions in different situations.
Or many emotions in one situation, huh? Shania, what's your thought? Yes, you got one. No, you got one. Yes, you got one. See, I said, even if you have to repeat what your mama said, just repeat that. You got to think. So what's your thought? Say, I concur. You know what concur means? Agreed. Say, I concur. All right. What's your thoughts, Niecy?
Matthew showed different emotions.
Not Matthew. Peter. Shows what?
Different emotions through his storm.
In the midst of a storm. Tanya?
Peter has a gamut of emotions.
He does. Lanika?
Well, I'm stuck on when you said an unclear vision from God can produce a gamut of emotions.
They can. Well, say it again. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But you can repeat it. It's not. See, we're not competing. We're complimenting each other. That there comes a point in my life where I'm going to be emotional, period. I'm just going to be emotional. Okay? But then in a storm, because I'm already an emotional creature, in a storm, or when I'm experiencing a storm, so now I'm really going to be emotional. And I can go from courage to crying to courage to coming to crying to courage. Too much is happening. And now, to add to that, I have this unclear vision that I don't know if it's God or not. Have everybody had it? Yeah. Is this God or is it not God? So now I'm really thrown off my rocker. So that's thinking. Junior, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? You have to think. You have to train your mind to think. Go ahead, Shana, but you was about to say. What was your question?
Okay, so you said, sometimes you're just emotional.
Yes.
What if you're just an emotional person? Like, you're just always emotional. It don't have to be like bad emotional, like crying out of sadness or like something happened or a storm or anything like that. Just emotional in general.
What about him, though? I mean, everybody's wired differently. But in this text, and Peter was emotional. He was a basket case. Because later on, he would cut you in Jesus' face. He cut a man's, didn't he do it? He pulled out a blade. He literally did it, Niecy. So, and I'm not calling him a basket case, but Peter has a gamut of emotions in the presence of God that, guess what, are just real. He needs to send up hope. He needs to see Miranda Gay. So it doesn't matter if you're emotional or not emotional. And watch this. I'm going to say this, and this might help just add to your question. One of you are emotional, and one of the emotions that you express and experience is numbness. And nobody says, well, they don't think you're emotional because you don't have this external outburst, but internally you're numb all the time. That's emotional too, right? That's a whole different emotion. So does that help with the questioning? But Peter is emotional in the midst of a storm. So I'm just saying this, Junior. It's not that this gives you an out, but I'm saying this to say this. When an unexpected storm arises in your life, sometimes you just might not always have it together. Right? Based upon this text, and I'm going to go a little further. Sanaa and Nisi and Shania, here it is. Got to, because it's Bible study. This is where you learn. Certain storms come in your life to clarify God's purpose on your life. What you over saying? See, if you don't know what God has called you to do, guess what might happen? A storm just might come. So let's pause. It's called Think, Pair, Share, Write. You're already writing. Let's start some thinking all over again. Who wants to go first? What are your thoughts right now based upon what you've heard and what are you experiencing? Who wants to go first? Who would love to go first?
On the
Anything.
certain storms that come in your life, sometimes is to clarify God's purpose in your life. For me, sometimes storms come to help. How to say it? To kind of test your faith.
Okay. Yeah. And not a bad test. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Okay. Certain storms, Shania, can come in your life to clarify God's call and purpose for your life. People say, I don't know why I'm going through a storm. I'm not doing anything wrong. Sometimes it's about clarity. Sometimes you really don't know who you think God is. And God says, okay, I have to give you a storm to draw you closer to me, to give you some clarity of who I am in your life. Think, pair, share. What are y'all thinking? Lanika said, this was a test, and we can talk about the test. Anybody else got some thoughts? What are y'all thinking? Storms do have a purpose, don't they? And all storms are not satanic. This storm was not a satanic storm. Sade said, prove it. Here it is. Verse 22. Somebody read verse 22.
Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds.
There it is. It wasn't storming when he dismissed them, was it? The storm did not arise till they literally, Nisi, moved from the shore. Sometimes, Brittany, you have to leave the safe place and the shore to see and meet the Jesus of the sea and the storm. Junior, write that down. Shore versus storm. I need to move. God needs to move me to the place in my life where I can grow from only trusting him on the shore to trusting him on the sea in a storm. Think, pair, share. What sense is all of this making right now? Some, none. What sense does it make?
The only thing that's sitting on me is like nothing about God and your
Slow down. That's really good that you said that at 16. Say it slower and louder.
Say it again. All right.
Say that again. That was good, wasn't it, Lanika? There comes a point in your life and maturity where your purpose and comfort can be total enemies. Because God has to move you out of your comfort, right? And God will use a storm to move you out of your comfort into your purpose. So you're not going through this so much because God is angry or God is mad. You're going through this because all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his what? Purpose. Romans, turn down. Romans. I got to show you this. Brittany, that was good. That was profound. Romans 8. Romans 8:28. 8:28. That was good, Brittany. That's a good thought. You share that. I hope everybody wrote that. That there comes a point in my life where there are certain storms that possibly could arise that have nothing to do with me being cantankerous or me being sinful. It has everything with me conforming to his image and moving into a place where he's called me to operate and give me life of purpose. Romans 8:28. Everybody there? What does it say?
We know that God works all things together for good for the ones who love God, but those who are called according to his purpose.
There it is. So I thought, Junior, what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts, Junior? Don't stop thinking. You got to always think your way through. Keep thinking, keep writing, keep learning. You've done your ABC brainstorm. You're doing your law of first mentioning. Now you're doing your think, pair, share. You're thinking, you're writing, you paired up. Bless you. You're writing some more. Brittany, that was a good take home truth. Lanika, what did you say earlier? How'd you forget? Didn't you write it down?
What was it? So about certain storms come in your life to clarify God. No.
Mm-hmm.
It was about a vision.
The vision.
To
The vision.
test your faith. That's
Right.
Oh, yeah, sometimes he'll send you through storms to test your faith.
Mm-hmm.
not always a bad thing.
It's not always a bad test.
And then I also wrote, sometimes God will call a storm in your life for you to trust him more.
To trust him more. This storm was there to clarify the purpose. This storm was also there so they could learn to trust him more. Trust him on a sea. Trust him out of the ship. Trust him in a storm. Trust him on the sea. Trust him out of the ship. Trust him in a storm. Everybody write those 3 S's down. There are 3 places I got to learn to trust God. Junior, you writing? 3 places. Your mama got it. 3 places. I gotta learn to trust God. I gotta trust God on the sea. Everybody say on the sea. I gotta trust God out of the ship. Somebody say out of the ship. Then I gotta learn to trust God in the storm. Somebody say in the storm. Those are 3 places that watch this tonight. I gotta learn to trust God, and none of those can happen as long as I'm on the shore. Was this making sense tonight? What'd you say tonight?
I'm going to sit in the chapel.
Don't worry about it.
So, but it's life. Shania, is this making any sense tonight? What sense does it make? Are you just agreeing? Think about it. I want you to tell me. It makes a lot of sense. How does it make sense? How do you connect with some of the things that's being said tonight? Huh? Got to think about how you're going to articulate it. Lanika, how does this make sense? And you say, Pastor, it just makes real sense. It just makes real sense, doesn't it? There's a relationship that you have with God that's only shore driven. And the shore God and the sea God, Nisi, they are the same God, but the experience that you share with God on the shore is not the same experience you share with him on the sea. And I can trust you where there's no storm. I can trust you when we're in a ship. But I got to learn to trust you away from the ship, out of the ship, on the sea, in a storm, and away from the shore. So sometimes, Brittany, in your life, in order to grow you, sometimes God has to move you. All right, I'm going to stop talking. I want y'all to talk now. She said, it makes sense though, doesn't it? You just got to read the Bible. So Junior, you've heard a lot. Nisi, Sanaya, you've heard a lot. Like a lot have been thrown at you. You should be thinking. You should be writing. Now you with somebody. Now you can collaborate. This is what makes more sense to me. This is what makes the most sense to me. This doesn't make any sense to me. So any more thoughts or any questions? One of the questions were, Lanika, what did you say? No. Sade, Sanai said, what if you're just an emotional person? Okay, you're just an emotional person. That's nothing wrong with that. It's what emotions are you experiencing the most? Then, any other questions before I take off? Any other questions that we had? Lanika talked about the vision being unclear, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Any questions before we move any further? Excuse me? I'm trying to hear you. What did you say? What did it?
Excuse me.
Y'all back in school. What's your question? How do you get a clear vision? That's a great question. How do you get a clear vision? Let's add to that question. How does your vision have more clarity when you're in the midst of a storm? Or how do you get clarity? Do what? When you remember, the vision of Jesus in verses 1 through 12 was simple. The vision of Jesus in verses 13 through 22 was simple. The vision for Jesus got difficult when the storm came. So how do you get that? That's a great question. Junior, do you want to answer that question? You pass? Say I pass. Say I pass. Sanaya, you want to say I pass? Nisi? You pass. Tanya? You want to answer that question?
Well, I was thinking about praying to ask for clarity.
Can you find that in the text? Where Peter prayed and asked for clarity? Yeah. You can find it in the text, right? Look at verse 28. What did he say? What did you say, nephew? He said, is it in the text? Look at verse 28. Anytime you're talking to Jesus / God, you're praying, right? Look at Peter's prayer life in the midst of the storm. Something he never had to pray before while on the shore in comfort. His prayer life, Sinai, had to change on the sea in the storm. And what does he say in verse 28?
And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water.
That's it. He didn't pray long, did he? So in order for me to get a much more clearer vision, Sanaya, of God in the midst of the storm, my prayer life possibly might have to change. Woo, y'all ain't gonna shout tonight, huh?
No, sir. No, you can
Catch your Sunday. You gonna store this?
I was gonna say, in order to get clarity, you have to be more specific about what you asking God for.
Yeah, you have to do, yeah. But before that, and I love everybody's right. Listen to this, Nisi. Before the specificities of prayer, before the clarity, don't minimize God's voice in your life, even when you don't know if it's Him yet. Because in verse 27, Jesus talks, doesn't He? So the first thing that possibly might have to happen is that I get a revelation of the voice of God in my life while I'm in the storm. Let me say it this way, Junior. Maybe before God hears from me, Lanika, I might need to hear from Him. That's right. What'd you say, little man? What'd you say? Amen?
Say you right. Amen. That's what he said.
So Nisi, before I get clarity on God's voice in the midst of my storm, I possibly might need to hear from Him first. And now, suddenly, I have to raise another question. Have I developed a keen sense of God's voice when I'm not on the shore? Is this making any sense tonight? Yes, no, maybe. Yeah, huh?
Me? Oh, yes, sir.
Any sense?
Yes, sir.
Always. Any more questions before we switch gears and go into our last activity and we'll be done? It's 7 o'clock. That's because you're busy. You're engaged. Think about it. When you're engaged, time flies. No, we won't. No, we're not. If you want to come, if you need Tanya to ride you around, she's ride you around at the Bible study. We going home. Say, cuz, take me ride around there. We can bust a block. So here it is. Junior, can we go to the last activity? Okay, let's back up. We opened up with just doing the New Testament books of the Bible, right? Then we did the law first mentioned, correct? And with the law first mentioned, we did an ABC brainstorm. That's what we're about to do. That's it.
Remember the name for it?
The acrostic. Yeah. Teaching you how to teach so that when you teach, it's easy. So we got our take home truth. He's a good student. Don't let us. He all right. He a boy. What boys, kids do. It's sensation. It's a feeling. He's feeling something. He feeling something. He's practicing shouting. Let him practice. He's at Ephesians. Shout, boy. So the last activity we're gonna do an acrostic for wind. What does the wind represent in my life? And here's how we're going to do it, Lanika. We're going to do a whole nother ABC brainstorm. And I will go first. On the letter W, the wind in my life represents my worry. Everybody say worry.
Say worry.
Worry. Say it. Let him talk. Anybody got any more W's for the any more words with the letter W? That's right. You said it. And I can't spell what you said. Only you know what you said.
W, I say my wind. W-I-N.
The wind can represent my wind. That's good.
Withstand.
My wind, the W can be how I withstand. So we got 3 words.
I ain't gonna say no more because all y'all is in my head.
No, we not. That's good. That's what you call thinking. It's shared thinking. It's what you do. You share your thinking with other people. And guess what? After tonight, any one of y'all can go teach this lesson to anybody. Just teach them. Just have conversation. So you got withstand, you got win, you got worry. Any more words with a W that come to mind?
What you gonna do in your stuff?
What? The what? Because I got to learn the what, don't I? I have to learn the what. All right, let's move to the letter I. Crooked I, crooked I. M-I, crooked letter I. Crooked letter I. Crooked letter. The I. What does the I represent from when?
Intense.
How intense, that's good. How intense it could be. Because guess what? Every storm that I've experienced, they are intense, aren't they? Especially the emotional ones. Give me another letter for I. Another word for I.
She said intense, so I'm gonna say your intentions.
Oh, I need some intentions in the middle of a storm. Yeah. Hey, that you gotta say that for evening in song. It ain't the cantata yet. It ain't the cantata. Say it. He almost said it.
You did.
I always talk to kids like they adults. Shout, boy. Shout. Look at that. All right, intentions, intents, any more? There's some irregularities in the storm, isn't it?
What you said.
That's life. All right, now the letter N is very deep because I don't know a lot of words that begin with N. There's other than everybody say negative, right? And sometimes my storm bring me to nothing, huh?
Do what you doing on your phone.
What? Because this is a lesson. This is Bible study. And you know how to teach now. You know how to facilitate. And when you go home, you can be like, how we pull all of this out of the lesson? Letter D. Letter D. What's the letter D? Give me some words for D. Downfall. Distraught. Dismantled. Distractions. Distress. Come on, y'all. Determined. Sade say, I'm going to be positive. Determined. Because in the middle of your storm, at some point, after all of what we said, you better be determined, right? We can be delusional. Right. That's right. Now, as we close, look at everything that we've done tonight. You should have a whole notepad full of notes, right? But the setting is different. But look at what you've done. You've done your ABC brainstorm. You've done your think, pair, share. You've done your acrostic for win. We've done some take-home truths. And then we'll close with this. Verse 30. Junior. You got your Bible open? 2 words. And this is how we'll close, Brittany. What caused Peter to sink? We can talk about the distractions, the distress, the dysfunction, the nigga, the word you said. Verse 30. When he what? After the he was what? When he what?
He became frightened.
When he saw, right? Then he what? Sink. He began to sink. So, Junior, watch this. When he got out of the ship, 2 things he experienced that became problematic for him being determined in his storm. He saw, so he changed his focus. And so now, the moment he changed his focus, it manipulated his faith.
It's supposed to be a purpose.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yes, it is.
You just opened up a new portal and then
Nah, that's all right. It's
you
okay.
manipulate your faith. Like,
When you change your focus, when you see that your storm is bigger than your God,
It's not, actually.
well, but when you saw it, when Peter saw it,
what you saw and what you know is what you
that's right. When you see your storm bigger than your God, it changes your focus and it manipulates your faith. And I close with that. The word of God for the people of God. We'll be back.
next Wednesday.
Amen. Amen.